Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is TVP World. You're watching World News. I'm your host, Benjamin Lee, and these are the latest headlines. Georgian President Salam Zourabichvili has left her official residence in Tbilisi to join protesters outside the parliament building. This dramatic move comes in response to the inauguration of Mikheil Kavelashvili, who was elected as president by the Electoral College. Our correspondent Don Arlith is reporting live from the scene. Don, can you give us an update on the situation on the ground right now?
Yes, well, as you mentioned, in a surprise move this morning, President Zourabichvili left the presidential palace. She said she was going to join the people. Of course, she says also that the people of Georgia will not recognize the newly elected president, and she is the only legitimate president, democratically elected president. And also, she's calling on the international community not to recognize this new president. Now, behind me in the parliament, just moments ago, Mikheil Kavelashvili, the Georgian Dream candidate, the only candidate for president, was inaugurated and brought in, of course, protesters gathering here in front of the parliament building, also, again, protesting the situation, which they say is illegitimate, of course. We'll see how long this continues, but it is quite a surprise today that President Zourabichvili did leave the presidential palace. They were threatening to arrest her had she stayed. But again, like I mentioned, she said she is joining the people, and she is the still true legitimate president. Ben, back to you.
Right, so I can see that there's more crowd gathered behind you right now with the police presence. I don't know if that's going to escalate, but in the meantime, if it does, please stay safe. Appreciate it, Don. At least 167 people have been killed after a passenger jet carrying 175 passengers and 6 crew members crash-landed at an airport in southwestern South Korea. Footage of the crash shows the plane sliding on its belly, slamming into a wall of the airport and bursting into flames. Korean officials said the disaster was caused by a landing gear malfunction. The death toll is feared to rise further as only 2 people, both crew members, have been rescued from the wreckage. Rescuers have said there's little chance of finding more survivors. This is a developing story and will continue to provide updates throughout the day. Western leaders must, quote, wake up and get serious about addressing Russia's action, according to Joshua Bergen of the Warsaw Security Forum. Speaking on TVP World Talks, Bergen emphasized the urgent need to hold Russia accountable for its persistent and multifaceted provocations.
If the Western world were as in lockstep as Russian elites tend to be, visibly, again, what we don't see behind the scenes, we don't see. But if the Western world was is in lockstep as Russian elites were, I think this war would have come to an end a long time ago. That said, I think it's incredibly important for the West generally to lock arms and to hold Russia accountable. You've already touched on it. I don't mean to jump ahead of you. The fact that Sweden has impounded that ship is a good first start. The notion that Russia has now multiple times inflicted damage on infrastructure in the Baltic Sea, the first time with little to no consequence, this can't stand if Russia's to be held accountable. It looks as though Vladimir Putin has jumped the shark. He is deep into a situation he can hardly back out of, and I don't see it getting better before it gets worse. That said, it might need to get worse in order for things to get better, as part of his elites in Russia come to terms with the fact that this is an unwinnable situation for them, and probably as importantly, as Western governments wake up to the fact that this is not mischief.
The bodies of 3 crew members and 21 passengers who perished in the Azerbaijan Airlines plane crash have been returned to Baku. President Vladimir Putin has issued an apology for the tragic accident, which occurred in Russian airspace on Wednesday. In a conversation with Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev, Putin described the crash as a tragic incident, but avoided taking direct responsibility for the downing of the aircraft. Preliminary investigations suggest the plane was struck by Russia's air defense system, which was reportedly responding to a Ukrainian drone attack targeting multiple cities. Sources indicate that Moscow's missiles mistakenly hit the plane. U.S. officials added on Saturday that there are early indications suggesting Russian air defense system were responsible for bringing down the jet in Kazakhstan. Slovakian Prime Minister Robert Fico's policies are causing significant challenges for Ukraine, according to Robert Pschel from the Center of Eastern Studies. Speaking to TVP World, Pschel criticized Bratislav's insistence on retaining Russian gas transit, warning that it risks deepening the divide between Slovakia and Western allies.
The position of Slovakia, of Prime Minister Fico, is actually a very selfish position, because he's almost exclusively talking about the problems that the end of the transit of Russian energy through Ukraine would create from Slovakia. Why would it create problems? Because it would deprive Slovakia of some transit currency money, and it could potentially, of course, create problems for the actual supplies in general. But that's an all-making problem, because for many years, and certainly since the beginning of this brutal war by Russia against Ukraine, I mean, that has been an international effort to basically get rid of these dependencies. Fico is known for this balancing act and trying to not to rock the boat too much when it comes to its relations with Western partners. But nevertheless, that's nothing to be complimentary on the contrary. I think it requires naming things as they are, which is, as I call it, a selfish game, which will not bring Slovakia ultimately the benefits. And at the moment, it's just really creating a big problem for Ukraine, which is fighting for its survival.
Russian energy giant Gazprom has announced it will halt natural gas deliveries to Moldova starting January 1st, citing unpaid debts. Moldovan authorities disputed these claims and accused Moscow of using gas as a political weapon. While Moldova sources its energy from other countries, Russian gas fuels a power plant in Transnistria, a breakaway region. This plant provides much of Moldova's electricity. The suspension could exacerbate the energy challenge in both Moldova and Transnistria. Moldova has announced plans to pursue legal action against Gazprom. An investigation has revealed that a Russian-linked tanker suspected of severing an undersea power cable between Finland and Estonia was outfitted with advanced surveillance technology. Finnish authorities have seized devices capable of intercepting and transmitting naval intelligence.
High-tech equipment, including listening and recording devices, was found aboard the Russian tanker seized by Finland, according to maritime publication Lloyd's List. Authorities investigating the case have since dubbed it a spy ship.
This is the first time where allies have said enough is enough, and this is a significant amping up of presence that shows NATO vigilance and NATO resolve in the region.
The ship was escorted by the Finnish border guard in connection with an investigation into the undersea power cable outage of Estlink 2 in the Baltic Sea. Now it is located in the waters of the Gulf of Finland. Eagle S is said to be one of the hundreds purchased by Russia after it launched the full-scale war in Ukraine in order to circumvent sanctions and illicitly trade oil. This time, sabotage was on the list too. The incident has prompted NATO to boost its military presence in the area while Western leaders work to put together a new package of sanctions, this time targeting LNG.
The main thing is to do this systematically to disrupt Russia's shadow fleet.
Finnish authorities and other authorities are talking a little bit tougher than before, where the aim of possible further operations is not merely to prevent this kind of sabotage from happening, but also to prevent the shadow fleet from functioning.
Finnish customs officials secured some 35,000 tons of unleaded gasoline, but that's just a drop in the bucket. It's estimated that since Moscow built up its fleet, it now accounts for 17% of the world's oil tankers.
On Sunday, 8 candidates are competing for the Croatian presidency in the first round of elections. While incumbent President Zoran Milanović is favored to win, experts anticipate the election will proceed to a runoff. Frontrunner Zoran Milanović has been labeled Croatia's own Donald Trump due to his nationalist populism and outspoken criticism of the European Union and NATO. Analysts predict that he will face pro-European government-backed candidate Dragan Primorac in the runoff scheduled for January 12th. Although the Croatian presidency is largely ceremonial with limited executive authority compared to the prime minister, the president plays a pivotal role in foreign policy, defense, and international diplomacy. This election concludes a super election year for Croatia, following a snap parliamentary election in April and European Parliament elections in June. The European Union has introduced a major initiative to reduce electronic waste. Starting Saturday, most small mobile devices sold within the bloc must support USB-C charging. This regulation will extend to laptops beginning in 2026, marking a significant shift in consumer electronic standards.
It took a while, but we're finally there. All new mobile devices in the EU will now be standardized to feature what you know as USB-C. This modern and simple standard used for charging and data has grown predominant in mobile devices in recent years, but mostly because of the regulation coming into force on Saturday.
We are replacing this pile of chargers with just this. The simplest solutions are often the best and most practical ones.
Apart from reducing e-waste by 11,000 tons annually, other benefits of switching to USB-C, according to the EU, include saving money. Consumers will save approximately €250 million a year on unnecessary charger purchases, as now you won't need to buy a new charger for every device. The charging speed will be the same for compatible devices, which means that manufacturers will not be allowed to limit these speeds for chargers of a different make.
As for me, who travels a lot, I think this will be very comfortable, very convenient for people.
It's nice to have less charging cords, because now my MacBook, my other Apple devices use less of these cords.
I think it's much easier and more practical, yeah?
Work on a common charger in the EU began back in 2009. First, a voluntary agreement limited existing cell phone chargers on the market to 3. But one manufacturer, Apple, refused to cooperate and used its own proprietary Lightning port up until recently. The new compulsory rules were adopted in 2022. They cover a wide range of devices, including phones, tablets, headphones, digital cameras, and more. Laptops will join this list in just over 2 years.
In northern Poland, participants are attempting to set a new Guinness World Record with a 24-hour ice swimming relay. The event, which began on December 28th, highlights the health benefits of cold therapy and promotes safe practices for exposure to extreme temperatures.
The event will consist of a relay race, with individual contestants entering here and swapping seamlessly throughout the next 24 hours. 200 people, one after another, will enter the water, which will have a maximum temperature of 5 degrees. There's going to be an observer from the Guinness World Records present to make sure the water temperature never rises above that limit. It's going to be loads of fun.
I've been ice swimming for 5 years now, and really, I've noticed a big change for the better health-wise. It's very good for the joints, for the heart, and for your circulation. And most of all, it's a great source of fun and joy in the winter.
And with that, we conclude this edition of World News. But for more news, update, and commentary, please stay tuned to TVP World.